There comes a moment in every life when thinking must end. Not because thought is useless, but because excessive thinking becomes a refined form of escape. You call it preparation. You call it caution. Yet beneath the surface, it is hesitation protecting you from commitment. Hesitation feels intelligent. It allows you to gather more information, weigh more options, and delay action without appearing idle. But while you hesitate, something subtle happens. Your confidence weakens, your focus scatters, and the opportunity you once saw begins to fade. Indecision is not neutral. It is a slow retreat. Most men believe they are being careful when they delay a decision. In reality, they are dividing their energy. Every option they keep open drains their commitment to any single path. And without commitment, progress becomes inconsistent. You move forward briefly, then you stop, then you reconsider, then you begin again. This cycle is not caused by lack of ability. It is caused by lack of finality. Let me ask you something directly. How many times have you known what to do, but delayed doing it? Not because you lacked knowledge, but because you lacked certainty. And while you waited for certainty, the moment passed. Certainty does not come before decision. It comes after. The mind seeks safety. It wants guarantees. It wants assurance that the path you choose will succeed. But success does not offer guarantees in advance. It rewards those who commit despite uncertainty. That is the difference between drifting and directing. The drifter waits for clarity. The director creates it through action. There is a hidden danger in keeping your options open. It feels like freedom, but it creates weakness. When multiple paths remain available, your mind never fully invests in one. You hold something back, and partial effort produces partial results. Success requires total commitment, and total commitment requires the removal of alternatives. Most men keep an escape route, a quiet backup plan, a just-in-case option, something they can retreat to if things become uncomfortable. And because that escape exists, their effort is never complete. They are not Allen. They are half-committed. And half-commitment guarantees slow progress. Have you ever noticed how differently you act when there is no alternative? When the deadline is real, when the consequence is immediate, when retreat is impossible. In those moments, hesitation disappears. You move quickly, decisively without overthinking. Why? Because the option to hesitate has been removed. This is the power of decision. Decision is not merely choosing a path. It is cutting off all others. It is declaring this is the direction, and I will move in it regardless of discomfort. That declaration changes your internal state. Your focus sharpens. Your energy concentrates. Distractions lose their appeal because now there is no debate, only execution. Indecision creates noise. Decision creates silence. And in that silence, action becomes clear. And most people believe they need more information before they decide. But information alone does not create confidence. Experience does. And experience only comes through action. So waiting for perfect knowledge delays growth. Growth requires movement. There is also a psychological shift that occurs when you commit fully. Your mind begins to work in your favor. It searches for solutions instead of excuses. It adapts instead of hesitating because now retreat is not an option. Adaptation replaces avoidance. This is where true progress begins. The moment you remove the possibility of turning back, you discover resources within yourself you did not know existed. Creativity increases, resilience strengthens, focus intensifies because necessity sharpens the mind, and necessity is created through decision. Most men never reach this state because they never fully commit. They remain in a constant state of partial engagement, interested but not invested, curious but not committed. And curiosity alone does not produce results. Commitment does. In this lesson, you will learn how to make decisions that hold under pressure, how to eliminate the hidden escape routes that weaken your resolve, how to train your mind to act with clarity instead of hesitation. You will discover how to move without waiting for perfect conditions and how to build momentum through decisive action. But before any method works, you must accept this truth. You do not need more time. You do not need more information. You need to decide. And once you decide and cut off retreat, you will find that hesitation was never your limitation. It was your habit. And habits can be broken. The moment you choose fully, finally, and without negotiation, you step out of uncertainty and into direction. And direction is where progress begins. Part 1. Then that is where your new life must begin. Not with another round of reflection, not with another week of weighing alternatives, but with an end to the inward retreat that has disguised itself as caution. I tell you plainly that hesitation has cost more dreams than ignorance, more opportunity than misfortune, and more years than poverty itself. A man may recover from lack of money more quickly than he recovers from the habit of divided thought. There are men who work hard for 10 years and yet advance less than another man who works with definite direction for 2. Why? Because power does not come merely from effort. It comes from effort concentrated upon one chosen end. The world does not reward movement alone. It rewards movement with aim. The man who walks in circles grows tired, yet reaches nowhere. The man who walks in one direction, though more slowly, at last arrives. You have perhaps suffered not from laziness, but from a subtler form of weakness. You have perhaps mistaken postponement for intelligence and delay for prudence. You have perhaps said to yourself that you were preparing, gathering facts, waiting for a better hour. But beneath all this may have been a simple unwillingness to commit yourself so deeply that retreat would become painful. Many men do not fear labor nearly as much as they fear finality. To decide means to close doors. To decide means to cease protecting all possible futures and to bind yourself to one. That is why indecision feels safe. It allows you to pretend that you are still free when in truth you are only unfocused. A man with 10 open roads before him may feel rich in possibility, yet he is poor in force. Every unclosed path drains energy from the path he says he prefers. Partial commitment is the most expensive habit in the world. And I want you to understand that all achievement begins with thought. But thought that never hardens into decision remains a ghost of power, not power itself. Great fortunes, great inventions, great leadership, great character all begin in the mind, but they do not remain there. They are chosen, believed in, organized, acted upon, and carried through. That is why I have long taught that desire, faith, decision, and persistence are not ornaments to success. They are its very bones. The drifter thinks endlessly and decides rarely. The director thinks clearly and decides firmly. The drifter waits for the fog to clear before taking a single step. The director steps and through movement discovers what stillness never revealed. This is one of the greatest lessons of life. Certainty often comes after the decision, not before it. Men who wait to feel fully sure before they act usually remain where they are until necessity humiliates them into movement. How many years have been lost in this manner? How many men have watched opportunity cool while they continued asking whether they should act? How many have known inwardly what ought to be done, yet delayed because they could not secure a guarantee from life in advance? Let me answer plainly. More than 10 years are lost this way by countless men. 20 years are lost by those who repeat the habit. 30 years are lost by those who build a whole identity around hesitation and call it realism. You save 10 years the moment you refuse to keep reopening questions that ought to have been settled long ago. You save 10 years when you cease asking each season whether you should become disciplined, serious, purposeful, and exacting with yourself. You save 10 years when you finally say, "This is my course, and I will now spend my strength in it." Most men are not short of effort. They are short of finality. They start with emotion and then negotiate with discomfort until the old pattern returns. What is required then is not more wishing but a stronger form of desire. Burning desire is the starting point of all achievement. And I do not mean by this the bright but brief heat of enthusiasm. I mean a fixed inward fire tied to a definite aim. I mean the kind of desire that makes retreat feel more painful than perseverance. I mean desire that has been accepted by the mind as a ruling force. Such desire simplifies life because it makes lesser temptations lose their charm. Consider Edwin C. Barnes. He did not merely admire Edison. He did not idly dream in passing that it might be pleasant to know him. He decided that he would become his business associate. There is tremendous power in that difference. A weak man says it would be nice. A stronger man says, "I will." The first remains a spectator of his own wish. The second begins the transformation of wish into reality. Barnes had no rich appearance, no splendid advantage, but he had decision, and decision altered the arrangement of his whole future. I want that to strike you deeply. He did not say he would try for a while and then reconsider. He did not reserve an inner escape. He did not protect himself with a dozen alternative identities in case the first one proved difficult. He fixed his mind. That is what men failed to do. They want the fruit of decision while keeping the psychology of retreat. But the mind cannot serve two masters. It cannot move with full power toward a goal it still suspects it may abandon. This is why your life has perhaps felt so exhausting. It is tiring to carry many unfinished selves. It is tiring to maintain many possible futures while fully entering none of them. It is tiring to be always nearly decided. Such a life leaks force. Every morning begins with debate. Every obstacle reopens the question. Every criticism weakens conviction. Every discomfort becomes an excuse to reconsider. Soon the mind learns the habit of retreat so well that hesitation begins to feel natural and decisiveness begins to feel extreme. Yet decisiveness is not extremity. It is order. It is internal government. It is the power by which a man brings his thought, time, energy, imagination, and effort into one line of movement. When that line is established, life changes. Distractions lose their fascination. Lesser ambitions fall away. The mind becomes quieter because it is no longer split among many competing claims. Decision creates silence within. Indecision creates noise. And a noisy mind can never direct great power for long. I speak now to your pain directly because I know what indecision does to a man. It leaves him feeling stuck while appearing busy. It fills him with regret because he knows he has not given himself completely to anything worthy of his full strength. It breeds fear of failure because he has never tested his power in one direction long enough to trust it. It feeds lack of direction because every open road invites more speculation. It creates frustration because he tries many things partially and then concludes nothing works. No, the truth is not that nothing works. The truth is that divided force seldom works. Half commitment produces half results, and half results destroy faith in the man who produced them. Then he blames circumstance or timing or luck when what really weakened him was the inward permission to retreat. This is why I say that indecision is not neutral. It is a slow retreat. It is a surrender stretched across months and years until a man one day discovers that his finest strength has been spent not in pursuit, but in postponement. And now I want to show you the beginning of transformation. The man who is uncertain speaks in conditions. He says if things go well. He says if the moment feels right. He says if I become more sure. The man who has decided speaks in law. He says, this is my direction. He says, this is what I will do. He says, I will adapt, but I will not turn back. One man sounds tentative because he is still protecting his escape. The other sounds firm because he has accepted his path inwardly. Once this change begins, others will notice it before you fully understand it yourself. Friends will hear a difference in your speech. You will no longer sound like a man auditioning for his own future. Your family will feel a difference in your bearing. There will be less restless talk and more settled intention. Rivals will begin to watch more carefully because men are uneasy around one who has ceased debating his own purpose. Society always responds to definiteness, even when it first resists it. A firm man disturbs the drifting. I want you to save years, not merely feel inspired for an hour. Therefore, hear this clearly. You save 10 years by making one decision that removes 10 recurring doubts. You save 20 years by refusing to build your life on temporary moods. You save 30 years by learning early that no man can become powerful while he keeps comforting the weaker self with secret escape routes. Every great life is narrowed before it is enlarged. A man first says no to many things so that one great yes may finally gain force. Do not misunderstand me. I am not asking you to become reckless. I am asking you to become definite. Recklessness acts without thought. Definite is thinks, then chooses, then stops rethinking what has already been chosen. That is the end of hesitation. That is the beginning of power. A wavering man can seldom command his own faculties, let alone inspire the confidence of others. But a man who knows where he stands and why becomes a center of force. Opportunities, alliances, and resources gather more naturally around such a man. Now begin to say this until your own subconscious mind starts to hear the new law you are placing upon it. I am the master of my fate. I control my thoughts. I act with purpose. I persist until I succeed. And again with firmness. I am the master of my fate. I control my thoughts. I act with purpose. I persist until I succeed. And this also, you must say, until it begins to define your conduct. I am the type of person who is disciplined, focused, confident, successful, and unstoppable. You are not merely speaking words when you do this rightly. You are planting commands. You are beginning to dethrone the hesitant self. You are beginning to tell the deeper mind that drift shall no longer rule this life. That is where your freedom starts. It does not start when every difficulty has been removed. It starts when internal debate is ended. The man who can no longer be bribed by uncertainty becomes dangerous to mediocrity because he has cut off the habit by which mediocrity keeps its servants weak. So decide now that hesitation shall no longer be excused in noble language. Decide now that what has already been made plain shall no longer be endlessly reconsidered. Decide now that your mind is to become a place of command, not continual retreat. Do not merely agree with this thought. Accept it as law. The strongest men I have ever studied were not always the most brilliant, nor the most favored by circumstance. But they were the men who learned to decide and then stand by decision until results, opposition, temporary defeat, and time itself were forced to yield. Part 2. Now once a man has decided, the next contest begins within. For a decision spoken once is not enough if the old habits of thought remain untouched. The conscious mind may choose a direction today. Yet the subconscious mind may still be filled with years of fear, hesitation, apology, and retreat. If the deeper mind is not re-educated, it will quietly work against the decision during hours of doubt, fatigue, and criticism. That is why so many men decide sincerely and yet later drift again. The subconscious mind is one of the mightiest powers in human life, yet it does not choose its own material. It accepts what is repeatedly given to it with feeling. If you speak weakness, picture weakness, expect weakness, and behave in weakness, it accepts that pattern and returns it to you as impulse, mood, habit, and tendency. If you speak strength, picture strength, act in strength, and repeat strength with faith, it begins to organize your inner forces in a new direction. It obeys the strongest repeated impression. This is why autosuggestion is not a toy for the sentimental. It is a law of self-direction. Men use it every day, though most use it ignorantly. The hesitant man says, "I am not ready." He says, "I always overthink." He says, "I need more time." He says, "What if I fail?" These are not harmless remarks. They are instructions. They are repeated orders delivered to the subconscious mind. And that mind accepting them shapes conduct accordingly. Then the man wonders why decision never seems to hold under pressure. You must reverse that process with deliberate force. You must repeat your chosen identity until it begins to feel natural. Not because nature has changed, but because you have retrained it. Many men are too casual with their own minds. They would not permit a stranger to enter their home and insult them daily. Yet they themselves repeat inward insults every morning. They say they are weak, confused, unlucky, behind, easily distracted, unfinished, and then they hope somehow to act like strong men under strain. It cannot be done while the inner command remains divided. Therefore, I say to you again, and I say it because it can save decades of inner defeat. Your speech must become aligned with your aim. I am the master of my fate. I control my thoughts. I act with purpose. I persist until I succeed. Again, I am the master of my fate. I control my thoughts. I act with purpose. I persist until I succeed. And this identity must be impressed again and again until the old hesitation begins to lose its hold. I am the type of person who is disciplined, focused, confident, successful, and unstoppable. When these words are spoken with emotion and joined with consistent action, faith begins to grow. And faith is the force that transforms thought into reality. I do not mean weak wishing. I mean a confident expectancy built by repetition, self-command, and evidence earned through action. Faith grows when a man sees himself obey a law he has given himself. Each obedience becomes proof. Each proof deepens belief. Each deepened belief makes the next obedience easier. Thus, faith and disciplined action become partners. This is why certainty comes after decision. A man does not gain certainty by staring at crossroads. He gains it by choosing one road and walking far enough upon it to see results. Indecision starves faith because it denies action. Without action, there is no evidence. Without evidence, the mind remains doubtful. Without belief, the will weakens. Then the man blames his lack of confidence when in truth he has refused the very conduct through which confidence is born. Faith is not handed to the hesitant. It is cultivated by the committed. Look at Henry Ford. He did not wait for the whole world to bless his ideas before proceeding. Had he done so, he would have remained another obscure man with unusual thoughts. Instead, he accepted his thought, held it, organized it, and persisted. Men laughed. Men declared things impossible. Men of standing explained why it could not be done. Yet he was not asking for their permission. He had decided. And when a man truly decides, opposition becomes material for greater concentration rather than a reason to reconsider. The same law can govern your own life, though perhaps on a humbler scale at first. When you decide, your mind begins searching for ways instead of excuses. That is one of the hidden rewards of cutting off retreat. The imagination becomes more active because it is no longer being used to imagine many exits. It is now free to devise means of advance. The listener who has long felt stuck may believe he lacks creativity or courage when often he has merely lacked necessity created by final commitment. Decision awakens resources that safety leaves asleep. Now let us address the 6 ghosts of fear. For these old enemies often sit behind hesitation and whisper their counsels in respectable language. The fear of poverty tells a man not to commit too strongly because he might lose what little security he has. The fear of criticism tells him not to stand too clearly for anything because others may laugh if he fails. Together these ghosts produce a man who is always nearly ready, always nearly resolved, always nearly transformed, yet never fully engaged in his own becoming. The fear of poverty keeps multitudes chained to smallness. It says, do not risk discomfort. It says, do not release your hold on the familiar. It says, protect what little certainty you possess. But what it protects is often not security at all. It protects stagnation. It protects timid living. It protects a life in which a man avoids temporary uncertainty only to inherit permanent dissatisfaction. To save 20 years, you must stop mistaking caution born of fear for wisdom born of thought. The one shrinks life, the other directs it. The fear of criticism is no less destructive. Many men do not hesitate because they lack intelligence. They hesitate because they are still privately governed by the opinions of others. They imagine how they will appear if they commit and then stumble. They imagine friends whispering, family doubting, rivals enjoying the sight of their discomfort. So they keep one foot behind them. They never give themselves entirely. Then if results are poor, they can say inwardly that they never truly went Allen. This is cowardice disguised as balance. If that truth stings, let it sting with profit. Better the pain of truth than the paralysis of self-deception. A man who fears criticism more than regret has not yet become free. He is still borrowing his identity from the crowd. Yet the crowd has never built a great life for any man. The crowd admires success after it is visible, but usually resists the seriousness that precedes it. Therefore, the man who wants freedom must learn to bear misunderstanding. He must become willing to be called changed, intense, or strange by those who have made peace with drift. Andrew Carnegie was not made powerful by softness of decision. Rockefeller was not made great by preserving many harmless alternatives. These men, whatever their differences, understood concentration. They understood definiteness. They understood the multiplication of force that comes when energy, ambition, and organization are directed toward chosen ends. Great power rarely belongs to the perpetually open-minded in the weak sense. It belongs to those who know what they seek and train the whole self toward it. Ambition without decision is a wheel spinning in mud. You ask how this saves years. I tell you plainly, the moment you stop allowing fear to vote in your councils, you stop losing months to hesitation. The moment you stop consulting criticism before commitment, you stop sacrificing seasons to appearances. The moment you stop preserving every pleasant alternative, you stop weakening your own determination. Save 10 years by ending the debate with fear. Save 20 by refusing to reopen it under new disguises. Save 30 by becoming early in life the sort of man who can be trusted by his own mind. And as this interchange occurs, the world around you begins to respond in subtle but powerful fashion. Your friends begin to hear fewer explanations and more conclusions. Your family begins to recognize that your word has become heavier. You are no longer the man who is always discussing what he may do. You are the man who is chosen. Rivals become uneasy because uncertainty once made you harmless. But decision has made you directional. Society often senses force before it understands it. It begins to adjust its attitude around the man who no longer leaks conviction. Do not think this change will always be welcomed at first. When a man who has long been uncertain becomes definite, those who were comfortable with his softness may resist the transformation. They may call it stubbornness. They may say, "You have become too serious." But seriousness is often what weak men call self-command when they do not wish to imitate it. Let them say so. You are not building a life for the passing comfort of their opinions. You are building one for power, usefulness, freedom, and self-respect.